Welcome in, fans of strategy, city building, simulation, or turn-based tactics games. Good news for you. Riding in today from the 6th of February until the 13th, it's the Steam Next Festival, and with it comes a whole load of new stuff. And on your screen today, with the title and genre showing up first of all, we'll be taking a look at some of the very best in those genres. There will of course be video chapters below if you dare skip between. And once we've got our YouTube housekeeping out of the way, like subscribing to help us reach 50,000, we'll jump straight in. Desyced is a city builder base building game, similar somewhat to Factorio, but with an art style that reminds me more of Satisfactory, more vibrant, more light, and of course, as you can tell, set in a sci-fi world. Here, of course, our task is to build up, get better research, more equipment, better buildings, right? The best base is, of course, going to be the winning one, but also our defenses matter here too. There's a strategic and combat layer to this game as well. What I really like about it, and its unique selling point, is the level of customization that is offered inside of this, also quite heavily survival-focused strategy game too. Every single unit has endless customization, as well as component swapping systems that move between them, making almost infinite combinations for you to create, both on land and inside of your units. I think it's a really neat take on a genre that already has a lot of fantastic games. This one, though, has absolutely made the top of my list for one that I'd like to try, and a friendly reminder, we do have just 1 week to try all of these demos. The next one on our list is The Great War Western Front. This is a grand strategy game with real-time elements as well. Its focus is around its what they call dual commander feature, where you essentially take 2 different roles. The first as a theatre commander inside of turn-based grand strategy as you direct forces, perform research, and other high-level tasks. You also take up the mantle as a field commander. Here, of course, we move into real-time battles where we direct, for example, units across a map towards opponent and trenches, using the environment, of course, to play out, hopefully, the enemy troops. It takes a very strong approach in focusing on one or the other, but it blends them together very well as well. I think that this will be a great game, particularly for fans of World War I strategy, of course. This one really does seem like a winner. I'd highly recommend. The next game on our list takes also a slightly different approach, this one more nuanced still. As a military political game, King's Orders is a strategy, of course, at its heart. What it aims to do is provide a simplified historical strategy game with some important innovations around it, and the key one is that you command your armies by sending letters with orders. Messengers with letters travel across the land and can be potentially lost or, goodness gracious, intercepted. Generals also execute orders only once they've received your reports in the same potentially dangerous ways. This, of course, opens up all kinds of different play possibilities, and adds a really interesting latency effect to the way that you play the game, and a really interesting way to make me think ahead as a player. Not so much, will I be able to do this next turn, do I have enough movement points, but will the order even get there? Do I need to send extras, or should I instead focus on intercepting enemy orders at the higher level to ensure I can secure victory on the front lines? I think it's a really neat approach. If you're looking for something slightly different, I'd recommend King's Orders. The next game up on my list, highly awarded, it's Phantom Brigade, the turn-based tactics game that has been, I'm aware, in development for quite some time now. However, with a planned release date of the 1st of March 2023, but a couple of weeks away, now might actually be a really great time to pick up the Phantom Brigade demo. What it offers is a hybrid of real-time and turn-based strategy. You see, you move your mechs, your war machines across the map and plan out their movements. You can set running movements and attacking movements at the same time, and you can see them play through. Once this planning phase is over, though, that's when the real-time element kicks in, as your move orders and their move orders start to take place. And inside of that realm, where everything is happening in the real time, it can be impacted by other things. Think about environmental effects, or maybe the physics carnage that takes place when you have all of these giant death robots running around a city. And as you can see on screen now, as it moves into that execution phase, your battles that you've carefully planned out begin to play out in real time. It's a fun way to destroy a little city with giant robots, but I also really like their careful planned approach and then the absolute chaos that can ensue with their physics-based engine and giant death machines. Well worth a look. I think it'll capture your interest, and like I say, the full game is actually releasing very soon. This one I mentioned in my first Steam video, but it's worth another, Plan B Terraform. This is a simulation game that really satisfies that Factorio itch that we were talking about earlier. It plays on automation, trains, and really encourages you to try and colonize, to terraform this new world by building a city, harvesting its resources, and hopefully, ultimately, being able to build a dynamic simulation of an atmosphere with temperature, water, and forests blooming. It's a really fun one. Highly recommend. The next entry on our list is a bit different. This is Oxygen First Breath. It's a base building simulation game. It's a strategy, of course, at its core. Here, though, I say it's a bit different because you can actually normally play the game, I believe featuring the first 50 in-game days, for free anyway. However, it's important to note that they do have a new demo out with new gameplay, a new map, in their very first Steam Next Fest feature, and I thought it would be important to draw attention to the game because it may not have been seen by many of you before, and if you're interested in this type of genre, you may very well be interested in Oxygen First Breath. It takes an interesting approach to very familiar, satisfying gameplays that we've seen before, like research, building, and managing. What it does a little differently, though, is provide some interesting natural challenges. Frosts, droughts, flooding, you name it. I really like its approach to the natural system. I hope they can lean into that more and really pull that out because it's something that this game does really well, alongside some early exploration features. Could potentially be worth a look, although of course you could wait for a later date. Next up, and you don't want to wait for this one, it's Fabledom. This is a city-building sandbox game with a real relaxing flair to it. As you can tell, it is of course in somewhat of a fantastical, dare I say fairy tale world, and it is a self-proclaimed laid-back city builder, so if you're after a slight change of pace, this one could very well be for you. However, don't be fooled by that, because the layout, the city building, the grids, the planning, the design, it's all really quite satisfying to use from a UI perspective, but also to look at. The art style really is something else. Inside of the game, you also have classic things that we would expect, like trading. Your citizens can also have feuds and relationships, and you might yourself want to also get a king or queen. There's a little romantic element buried in here too, and of course combat with armies, led by your town champion and tasked to defend your little kingdom against your neighbours and their minions. It's a fun one, reminds me a little bit of the Settlers and Foundation, and it's well worth a look, I think, while it has its demo out during the Steam Next Fest. Moving along to my honourable mention, or is this the honourable meme? I'm not sure. This is I Am Future, and it's my honourable mention because it's something a little bit different, and I think that's expressed really clearly by this gameplay trailer that they released fairly recently, which is also a music video. Now, something that might strike you initially is that this has a very different contrast to it than a lot of the other games we've looked at, and by that I mean the colour scheme. It is very bright, it is very happy. Of course, we're moving through from Fabledom though, so maybe our appetite has already been dealt with. Either way, this is a fairly interesting simulation come farming game, really. You are alone on a skyscraper roof in a completely flooded city. They call it the coziest post-apocalypse ever. We were tasked to build, craft, farm, and fish, survive, of course. There's exploration elements that are fresh and exciting, but what interests me the most about this one, and the reason why I'm including it as my honourable mention, I should say, is because it's very popular. Okay, this is a actually very good game, and if you're looking at it, I have seen some people say it looks too much like Fortnite, I don't want to play it. I would encourage you, if you're feeling like something a little bit different, give it a go. Its gameplay is satisfying, it runs fairly well, and if you're looking for something that has some exploration elements to it, this is one of the only games inside of this countdown that will satisfy that craving. However, of course, I already have a full video on my channel. Moving along to the next one, it's Sons of Valhalla. This is an RPG strategy game, and of course, as you can tell, wonderful pixel art graphics. And they really did a good job with the animations, the lighting, the setting. You might think 2D pixel art, no thank you, but I'd encourage you to think again if you're in that mindset. It's a strategy game, but it's also really an RPG. There's a base-building strategic element to it, where we essentially as players create and upgrade a variety of buildings, gathering resources, providing storage, training, and ultimately, of course, building up a band of warriors, for then we set out into this tense combat and really build up a story. I love the way it merges two genres together so flawlessly and effortlessly. The next game on my list is one I've talked about a little bit already on the channel, Xenonauts 2. It's a turn-based RPG, simulator, base building game. It's certainly a strategy game, and if you haven't heard me talk about it already, and if you aren't already familiar with the XCOM franchise, this is what it's all about. Inside or outside of the worldview, you can do all sorts of things, from train, upgrade your troops, maybe even rename them. More importantly though, you can build a base, get extra equipment, research new guns, and then take them out into the world, which you're trying to defend from an alien invasion. And by establishing bases across it and ensuring that they're equipped with the best gear, you then move through into the next phase of the game. And it's the phase of the game that fans of XCOM will of course very much enjoy. The game itself has self-confessed that it is absolutely inspired by the XCOM classics, and of course as you move through, or if you've played Xenonaut 1, you'll be familiar with this setting. Here we have our troops that we talked about earlier, designated, given some guns, some classes, and thrown into battle, and here we're tasked with taking out the hostile combatants. Each troop per turn, because of course this is the turn-based tactics layer to Xenonauts 2, is maybe moving across to get a good line of sight, find cover, scout out the enemies. Whatever they might do though, they are limited by a certain number of points, time units, that they can use each turn. Using a shot will use them up. If you want to aim down sights and take an even more accurate shot, that'll cost you more points. It's about striking a fine balance between how many points you're going to use with each unit each turn, but also trying to keep them alive, because the other thing about Xenonauts 2 is it is not a particularly forgiving experience. If you move into the wrong place and you don't have a backup plan, you will lose. You will lose your people, you will lose those characters that you may have built up a relationship with if you've renamed them. Xenonauts 2 is a fantastic XCOM-inspired turn-based tactics game, and that's why it's featured so heavily here in this video, but also on my channel. If you'd like to hear more about it, I've covered it already in a separate video. I'd like to do more with more games on this list, but there is just so much to choose from. So, if there's one that you'd like to see me cover and you're still listening at this point in the video, please comment it below. Say, I was still listening and I'd like you to play this, and I will treat your word as gospel. Anyway, moving along to the final entry on my list, and this one is grand. Here we have Broken Arrow. It's also quite unique. This is an action real-time strategy game and a self-described war game, because that is what it is all about. It is quite grand in its scale, and as you can see by some gameplay footage, there are a variety of units on offer, and it does a wonderful job to simulate modern warfare. Here we see things like artillery, modern tanks moving across fields, and of course a barrage of incoming helicopters being swatted down by Samfire to come soon. It looks to me like a very interesting simulation of modern warfare at that sort of war game level. They boast that there are over 200 different realistic military units in the game and technologies. Hard to say where that is divided, but also that it offers truly immense battles. Don't forget, it is land, air, potentially even sea, with aircraft carriers of note making it, as well as giant transport vehicles screaming across the ocean. I've seen it all. It looks like a really fascinating one, but I'll have to get my teeth into it to really find out. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have a week to try out these demos. Let's not waste it. I'll see you then.